I guess I'm not surprised by what's happened. A lot of schools will have plans on paper, but they neither practice their plans on a regular basis, nor do they, and the plans may be out of date. You know,
when you say practice, you mean physically practice.
Physically practice,
not just follow,
but actually have rehearsals of what they're going to do.
If a plan is considered out of date, how long would that be in your estimation?
I would say if it's longer than 5 years, it's out of date. Because the staff are currently changing, especially in St. Louis Public Schools.
Mm-hmm.
The principal may have changed 4 or 5 times in a given amount of time. One of the problems you have in particular with St. Louis Public Schools is they're so large that the principals, the buildings themselves, or no, the district itself is so large that there's a disconnect between that. I've done some work down there as well. That there's a separation between the principal and 911 North 11th, which is the central office. So you might have a principal that's out there by themselves, and there's very little communication between central office and that individual school principal in that building.
Right. But isn't it true with any intruder situation that the first 5 minutes or so are critical and you're basically on your own? Whoever's in that building during those 5 minutes, aren't they pretty much on their own?
And they need to have rehearsed that plan. That secretary needs to know what to do. The teachers in the classrooms need to know what to do. They need to be, whatever the plan calls for, sliding a bookshelf in front of the door, or pulling the blinds down, locking the doors. It needs to be like something set over the intercom, like code red or code blue or whatever that system is, so they know what they need to do.
Mm-hmm.
And those kids need to be under their desks, and they need to be trained to be quiet.
And I would say that probably even goes for college as well.
Oh, yeah.
Because you're having the issue across the board.
And then there needs to be a plan for how are you going to handle the media? How are you going to handle the parents that are converging on the building? The police, there has to be someone that's directing all of that.
Mm-hmm. What did you see about the clip we just saw on KSDK?
I saw a lot of people converging on the scene, and no set plan or procedure or someone even outside the building kind of coordinating what's happening. I just saw a bunch of people running around, which is very, it can be traumatic for the kids, it can be traumatic for the community, and it's just not good for the school in general or the school district. And here's the other thing. We see school shootings all over the TV and everything, but it's really not an epidemic yet. Notice I said yet. And all threats and all threateners are not equal either. A lot of people have that misconception as well that it's all the same, and it really isn't.
Why is it not an epidemic?
Each situation.
What's the definition of an epidemic?
An epidemic would be if it happens it's the frequency of the situation, meaning, are we having school shootings like, I guess, once a week?
That
would probably be an epidemic, would be in my opinion.
Well, we're almost getting there.
Well, notice I said yet.
Yeah.
I said yet. I mean, and there's a lot of situations there are a lot of things that go into.
Okay.
I mean, you have to look at the different types of threats.
Well, plus it's being covered more too. There's the digital media revolution has made it smaller, so everybody has access to information going on in places that they normally wouldn't have before. So it can be a perception issue, but there is an increase from what I understand going on.
I think there isn't somewhat of an increase lately, I would say.
Right.
overall, I don't think the statistics would show that, but I think in the last couple of months, at least from what I've been watching, there's been a slight uptick, and I think a lot of that's happening for several reasons. I think it's not all, it doesn't all come down to socioeconomics, but I think part of our problem is we're becoming a two-class society, and when you have people that are economically, what's the word that I'm searching for here? Not deprived's not the right word, but
well, there's a level of socioeconomic alienation.
Yeah.
If nothing else, from a perception that's occurring,
Right.
that's going on.
And what happens typically, in not all cases, but some cases, is the parents working 3 and 4 jobs to try to put food on the table, and so their kids are left unsupervised at home.
Yeah.
That's kind of my point with all that.
But there is also, we were talking about this, we had a number of talks about this, about, currently here in the United States, I think it's something like 1 out of 4 women are on psychotropic drugs.
Right.
And 1 out of 6 men are on psychotropic drugs. So there is a definitive tie to, and we're the most drugged population on earth. And if you look at the types of psychotropic drugs that are being given, if you go to the drug companies and look at what the adverse effects, side effects are, almost all of them have psychotic behavior and potential violence as a side effect.
Right.
And so we've got a deeper issue than just mental illness. Some of this could be actually synthetically triggered episodes occurring because of over-medication of the population, as well as improper treatment and inadequate procedures in terms of diagnosing people. And we've talked about that. Remember we were talking about there being a multi-step diagnosis process where you actually do the blood work on folks.
Right, it's supposed to happen
Take
a little
in
bit
more of a
differently
wholeness
than what it
approach.
is.
And
a lot of the times it's because of cost. We can't give everybody an MRI because it costs $15,000 to do an MRI,
Yeah,
which is insane.
Well,
but
balance, I don't know what the cost of an MRI is, but I'm sure
it's insane, whatever it
But
is.
the thing is that if you actually look at this at a macro level, what's the cost to increasing security apparatus nationally versus these things being allowed to the insurance companies to go through? If we do a proper diagnosis set where you do a blood test, where you're checking neurotransmitters, you're checking them out, not just from a psychological perspective, from a nutritional perspective, and then you actually do brain tests where you're doing brain scans and finding out what's going on. You do a number of these things before you even add a drug into the mix so that you're properly diagnosed.
Let me add a little bit of a spin on this.
Sure.
Okay.
Yeah.
Not every school shooter has a mental health problem, though.
That's what's starting to happen,
Okay.
I think.
And I just wanted, and it's not that I disagree with Max, it's just that I wanted to throw that little caveat in there.
Oh, yeah.
You had mentioned in our previous discussion about the school resource officers and their role in this whole process, and they have a very big role. However, the kids act differently when the police officers are around because they have a uniform, they have a badge, they have some of them are armed, most of them are armed because they're police officers. So you're probably not going to see the types of behaviors that you normally see that you might see around the teachers. And this is where I go back to the teachers being the primary observer of what I call practicing behavior. School shootings and school violence does not happen just all of a sudden. It's called
primary. These are the primary observers.
Primary observers are teachers, and they have to be trained appropriately. Okay. And
they're getting the real students.
They know the real they see the real behavior, right?
They're the boots on the ground.
Right, they're the boots on the ground. And no school violence episode happens and just happens. It's not all of a sudden I just went bonkers and I came to school with a gun. There is something called what we call practicing behavior, okay, where kids, and then the other thing is you have to train the kids to report the situations too, because the kids know.
Yeah, but they can't even get them to reveal bullying behavior, so.
You bring up an interesting thing. You use the word bullying, or another term for that is relational aggression.
Relational aggression.
Okay, where that's a cause of a lot of the situations. And let me highlight the word bullying for a second. Bullying is defined by having the person that's doing the bullying or the aggression has more power over the person that is being the bullyee or the victim. Okay, in order for it to be bullying, and this is a point that I like to make because I think a lot of people misperceive bullying. Bullying is not every situation that involves a physical confrontation. In fact, as we know, a lot of bullying is indirect. Hey Max, you know that pants rider? You know, she just looks funny. You know, okay, so it's indirect. It's spreading rumors. It's damaging someone's reputation.
On Facebook.
Thank you. And that was my next point. Cyberbullying has a lot of impact in this stuff as well, because this is an area that's difficult for schools to, in defense of the school system. It's hard for them to police Facebook. Now, people have gotten themselves in trouble for making fake profiles on Facebook so they can monitor the kids' activities.
Well, it's also done on personal time, so when somebody brings it back into the school setting, if it's happened at night or over the weekend, it hasn't happened on school property. So is that really their domain?
However, family issues always kind of points back to that.
That's a very thin line with the law right now, because some lawsuits that have been brought up, and I can't cite case in point because my brain's a little fuzzy with all that, but the school law was several years ago. But you have situations where schools are made responsible for kids on their way home from school. So the question is, where does the school's responsibility end? And that's a question that's been left unanswered.
Or what if you're on a sports team?
That's another good question.
And the bullying's
If you're under the supervision of school staff, and that's where it's happening, then school is responsible for that, because it's under the supervision of a school activity. But back to my point, school shootings do not happen in isolation. There's things that are happening before that happens that are clues to what is going to happen next, and that's why you have to have a proper reporting system. The teachers need to be trained in it. But more importantly, though, we need to prevent these things from happening. And because of the budget crisis and because of what's going on economically right now, schools are not able to put as much emphasis on what I call social skills training, or being able to teach these kids pro-social behaviors. School is beyond just reading the 3 R's.
Yeah.
Reading, writing, and arithmetic.
Right.
Okay?
Right.
We have to go beyond that, and it's challenging, but schools, I think, have the staff, and if they train their staff appropriately, could pull that off.
Okay.
There just has to be a focus on prevention.
So that's part of the problem, isn't it? Isolation. The parents are isolated from the process. The kids are isolated from the process.
And that's where homeschool collaboration, you might want to put this in there too. Homeschool collaboration. And a lot of districts will say, well, we do a wonderful job with that. We have bake sales. No. In fact, there's a book out there called Beyond the Bake Sale.
Not homeschooling, but
homeschool.
Yeah, home to school
collaboration.
That's it, yeah.
And a lot of people have to put aside their feelings about, how they were treated in school.
Right.
Now, and this is the other thing that I've seen too, there has to be a willingness as well on the part of the leadership in the school district.